I lost physical custody of my son after raising him for 11 years as a single mother after his dad abandoned me while I was pregnant.
At this point, I feel like I failed him because I lost the case. And now, I know that he has to move.
It's very hard to believe that you lost custody when you were doing everything right.
He told me he wanted nothing to do with this baby and to never contact him at any point.
Disagreeing with a lot of the stuff. Okay, you want to come get him on this day? You want to do this? Cool. I'm not even putting up a fight. He's had no problems with visitation. A lot of people were like, well, you should have saw or you should have never let him do that. But then y'all would have called me bitter. He had even a small piece of evidence to back him, to show like, oh, one disagreement where we had or something like that. Like, oh, see, she's angry, And it's like, or if I told a joke.
When you were going to this custody battle with your child's father, what was your finances like?
He would make it seem like it was something serious, and he would react to it in court as if, oh yeah, like everybody gave me the confidence that the judge would see through it. I wasn't even like protected by law.
Do you want to take a minute?
Yeah.
Okay. What makes you a better parent? Why do you think it's not good for your son to be with his father?
At this point, I realized that it's not about telling the truth. It's not about justice. It's the best performer. It's the best performer.
All rise.
I just want to be able to see my daughter.
Like a real man to be.
So you're just living off his child.
We've gone over so many of these cases.
Order in the court.
All right, Mr. Alexis, I guess we can get started. This is what I've got from your story that was sent to me on Facebook. It was a long post, so we have tried to highlight the key points. Anything that I've missed, please make sure to correct me. And again, before we get started, if I ask questions, it's mostly just for clarification purposes. So this is what I got from your story so far. So you and your child's father met when you were 22. You got pregnant right after, and for some reason the relationship didn't work out. So you were basically raising your child by yourself. And according to what I got from your story, your child's father was in the army. And early on, you noticed that your son was developing, is at an early stage of autism. You had no problem with your child's father, so your child was going to visit. So let me ask you, I know that you are in Arkansas. What state is your child's father in?
I don't really want to give specifics as far as his details.
Okay.
I don't want to tell that he's in.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, that's fine. So he's just in another state. We can say that, right? All right. So he's in another state, and you had no problem when he came to custody. So you were letting your son fly out to him, and back and forth between the two of you. And then, to your surprise, he filed for a custody modification. So I'm guessing when you were letting your child fly, back and forth between you and the father, you guys had no custody orders between you two. So you were just doing it, because you believed that was the right thing to do, right? And then he filed for a custody modifications behind your back. And to your surprise, the judge granted the custody for him. So now he has custody of your son. And according to your post on Facebook, you believe that the judge was biased because the judge and the attorney that represented him are somewhat related, right? And I think that's the gist of the story. And I don't know if I missed anything, but that's what we were able to get from the post on Facebook. And then I want to start where you're comfortable at. Can we start from the beginning? Like, I want to first understand, what was the relationship like when you guys met? And again, forgive me for asking this directly, but was it a one night thing? Was it a fling, or was it you guys were in a committed relationship prior to you guys breaking up?
Right. So we actually met in college. So we had known each other for some time, but we had never dated. So we actually started dating in my early 20s. I don't want to specify the exact age because I can't remember. But I got pregnant when I was 22. Now, we had been together for a couple of years at this point, and he was finishing up college. But after college, he was due to go to the military, and we had plans to just continue a long distance relationship. Well, after I found out I was pregnant, that's when I realized that he had been working things out with his ex-girlfriend. I guess he had been dealing with both of us at that point, and me being pregnant, of course, now you can't juggle the two women. Of course, she's probably not gonna want to stay around if you have a kid on the way, which I get that part of it, but he just totally switched on me. I know a lot of people think that, well, why would you want to be, this is something, he kind of blindsided me by not wanting to be involved and by some of the things that he said once we did find out that I was expecting a child. And at that point, he had already moved away. He was gone for about 2 weeks, but I was already about 5 to 6 weeks pregnant at the point to where when I found out that I was pregnant. And it wasn't a one night stand. We are what I believe to be in a committed relationship, but you know.
Okay. All right. So you said he was dealing with someone else when you got pregnant?
Yeah, so I found out he had been rekindling things with his ex-girlfriend.
Okay. And my understanding of your story, again, posted on Facebook, he is now married. Is he married to that same girlfriend that you believe that he was dealing with when you were together?
No. So I believe that they still dated sometime after I was pregnant, but it was out of the blue that he had started dating a new girl, and shortly after he introduced her to us, he was they were engaged and married.
So when you got engaged to marry, were you still pregnant, or that's when you gave birth?
No, my son, when he got married, my son was about 4, I believe.
Okay.
3 or 4.
Okay. And your son is 12 now, right?
He's 11.
11 now. Okay. So he's 11 now. And then, all right, so your son was 4 when you got married. So what was your relationship with him like when you got married?
Well, before he got married, we had became cordial. So he would come into town every now and then, usually on a holiday break, or it was about maybe every 3 months or so, usually during the holiday. And this
Okay.
would only be like for the weekend. And he would come into town. He would spend some time with him, but not a lot of time. So that was kind of things that we disagreed about. I felt like you could spend more time with him. Um, of course, at this point, I'm handling most of the responsibilities. He's coming in town every 3 months or so and spending the weekend in town, but not really a lot of time with our son. It wasn't until he got married to where he started, once he came to visit in town, he started actually spending the time with our son, because then they would get like a hotel room and they would stay at the room, and then they would kind of spend time with him that weekend, visit family, and then bring him back. But before he got married, he didn't really, even though he came to town, he didn't really spend a lot of time with him.
That's what changed, I guess, the scenario.
It was obvious that's kind of what changed things. But even though I noticed it, I spoke with, some of my friends and family, and they were just like, well, yeah, just, let him. If he's now stepping it up, even if he is trying to impress her, just let him. Before he actually got married, I actually encouraged him to be more involved, spend more time with them. And then once he got married, I acknowledged the fact that it didn't happen until he got married, but I was accepting of it. I encouraged more of it. Like, I had no problem with them spending time with each other.
Okay. What was going through your mind when you found out that he was getting married?
Well, the way he got married, it was kind of awkward, because at that point he had started kind of coming around and even visiting the idea that he had been thinking about us kind of raising our son together, like back in a relationship. So once I found out he was, because I don't know at what point he got married, actually, because at one point we thought he was just engaged, and then we found out he was actually married. So initially, I believe we did have a disagreement about it, just because he had just, brought up the idea that he wanted us to get back together. But once they got married, it was just like, it is what it is. I accepted it, and we just continued to co-parent.
Okay. So when you found out that he was getting married, you never tried to stop your son from going to see his father?
I'm sorry, it cut out. What'd you say?
I was asking, when you found out that he was getting married, you never tried to stop your son from going to see his father.
No, no. I still didn't
Okay.
stop visitation or anything. He and I had conversations about it, but I still never stopped the relationship between them.
Okay. You said earlier that he was coming to town to see his son. At what point did you start sending your son to go see him?
This was after he was married, and he was about 5 or 6, I believe. He started visiting him for Christmas breaks. And initially it was because school would be out.
Okay.
And initially the school that he was attending was like a developmental preschool, it was year round. So during Christmas, they would only be out for maybe a couple days, which was doable when it comes to childcare. But once he moved on to regular school, they're out for the entire Christmas break. So he would go then with his dad.
Okay. Okay. And at what point did you find out that your son had early autism?
It
The early
wasn't
stages
until
of
he was
autism.
7.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't until he was 7 where he received the diagnosis, but I had him at a developmental preschool as early as 3, I believe, because I had already
Okay.
noticed those signs. So I had got him tested, evaluated, and like I said, that he was too young to diagnose at the time. So we just got him in occupational therapy, speech, and OT. I'm sorry, OT, PT, and speech. And that's when he started going to the developmental preschool where he would receive those services at school.
Okay. And his father was aware of this?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. So let's move on to the court now. So you allow your son to go with his father during the summer breaks, basically. At what point did you how long was that before he filed for custody modifications?
He started going with him. He was already going for some holidays, starting at 5 or 6. He started going with him for the summer, I believe in 2019, because at this point I'm in another relationship. So now, of course, he's being probed to be involved more. So now he's going with him for the summer. So that was in 2019. So it wasn't until 2024 when he filed for custody.
Okay. So you got served with the papers. What was that like for you when you got served with the papers?
It was actually pretty shocking. I never, mainly because he always encouraged me to just work with him to work out an arrangement when it came to how much support, he would provide and visitation and things. He always asked me not to go to court on him. So when he had me served, it was pretty shocking, especially because we had just had a conversation about him wanting him to move there, and I just explained to him that that wasn't in his best interest and it wouldn't solve the issues that he felt like our son was experiencing as far as his diagnosis goes.
Okay. Hold on. So you guys had the conversation about you letting your son go stay with his father.
Yes, he would randomly ask me this anytime, anything happened. Like if he had a bad day at school, whether, the teacher said he wasn't listening or, he had what they call a meltdown, his only kind of support would be offering, well, he can always come live here or, things like that. That was his go-to, like, let him come live here. And I'm like, that's not going to fix anything. We need to try to work on getting him services and everything he needs where he currently is, because with his diagnosis, big changes like that, they don't deal well with those.
Okay. Okay, so you guys had the conversation about your child going to stay with the father. You said no, and then he filed for custody. So you got served with the paper. So did you hire an attorney when you got served right away, or you presented yourself prior to getting a lawyer?
So I sent my son with him for the summer. He had me served. I didn't have an attorney at that point. I actually was, after I got served, I had to figure out and basically seek representation.
So hold on. So you went to the custody case pro se, is what you're saying?
No,
You had an attorney.
I
Can you hear me?
retained an attorney. So I had an attorney throughout this entire process. But
Okay.
initially
Okay.
when I got served, I didn't, of course, but then I hired an attorney.
Okay. What was that conversation like, if you can share it? When you got served, you had an attorney. What was your conversation like with the attorney?
I I basically explained to him that I had been served. I let him know, we had a discussion about him moving out of town, and I declined that suggestion. And my attorney was just, he read through the document. He saw what he claimed. He saw through what he was trying to do and what he was trying to say, but he was confident that he didn't have the grounds to get custody. He was confident that there
Okay.
was no way that he could win. But, I did kind of tell him, like, um, just by reading through the documents, it was clear and it was evident what his game plan was. So I let my attorney know so that he could be ahead of any type of narrative or manipulation that he would try to use on me, because it was clear reading the document exactly what he was intending to say or do, or how he was going to try to control the narrative. So I let my attorney know.
Okay.
I was completely, open and honest with our attorney about our situation and where we were today and why he even filed, because he
Okay.
was curious as to wonder why he waited 10, 11 years to file for custody.
Okay. So your attorney guaranteed you that based on the ground that he filed for custody, there is no way that he's going to win.
Basically.
Okay. So are you able to share the ground that he filed the custody is on?
I can't say exactly, because I'm not sure what I know exactly what you mean. But initially, he was trying to paint it as if it was some type of medical neglect, as if I wasn't handling my son's diagnosis seriously, and if I wasn't, getting him the help that he needed.
Okay, so that was my next question because I was trying to see what ground did he use to file for custody,
Yeah.
given that you guys were in two
So
different
he said,
states.
right. So he said he had the tools and the resources and the income to take care of him, and then he also wanted to use the diagnosis as his main reason for filing for custody.
Okay, so that's the legal ground that he used. Now, prior to that, were
Yeah.
there any type of abuse or anything that happened to your son while he was under your care that was reported to the court or to the police or anything of that nature?
No, there was no abuse, no neglect, no CPS cases. There was nothing. He had absolutely nothing. And even with the claim of, I don't want to say he said medical neglect, but that's how he painted that picture. There wasn't even that. My son was actively, or I should, our son was in ABA therapy at the time.
Okay. Okay, so the reason why I'm asking this question is because, and this is just my experience. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, but my personal experience, I've never seen a case where a mother lose custody, especially when they're in two different states, to a father they haven't had custody for like you say 10 to 11 years. That's very hard. It's very hard to do in court. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to see what strategy that he used to be able to get custody. So your attorney guarantee you that you are not going to lose. You guys go to court. What happened there?
Well, when we get to court, he presented some of these concerns of his, which he said, oh, she's not taking it seriously. But after we kind of debunked that with the history of therapy and services, and even at home, the help that I provide him there, that theory was debunked. So what they used was a one-off situation in which the same summer that he filed for custody, he actually came into town, which is not usual. He came into town for a promotion ceremony, and him and our son came into town. He didn't advise me at all that they would be in town, which is something that he would usually do, of course, so that I could see him, spend some time with him during the summer, because I never get to do that. I haven't gotten to do that since 2019, spend time with him during the summer. And so during this visit, like I said, I went to text my son that morning, and I saw that he was in Arkansas, and I hadn't been made aware of that at all. So I tracked this location. He was navigating through the local area, and I'm still waiting to see if anybody's going to contact me. At this point, no one ever did. So I did try to reach out to my son via FaceTime, but he didn't answer. I didn't bother contacting his dad because at this point I know that you're trying to hide the fact that you're in town. So now I'm concerned because you've already waited until I sent him with you for the summer. You also turned off his location. His location was turned off by noon at that point. And then when I reached out to him after had been served, he did advise me that he was trying to put him in school in the state that he lives in. So I know that you have no intentions on me seeing him at all. So after I got off work, I waited some time and then I went to the location where I last saw him, which was a hotel where they typically stay when he's in town. And I'm like, I need to lay eyes on him just to make sure he's okay. Because again, I don't know what's going on. This is odd to me at this point that he's in town. You haven't told me, and then you turned off his location to hide the fact that he was here. So I went to the location and I saw him. He was on his phone, like standing outside of the hotel, and they were getting out of the car at valet. So I walked up to him and, talked to him. And once his dad saw that I was talking to him, oh, he started yelling, asking me, what am I doing? I did have my friend there to kind of basically mediate and tell him like she's talking to him, just checking on him, making sure that he's fine. And so he starts yelling and saying, oh, this is kidnapping. This is kidnapping. I'm telling him, I'm like, no, I'm going to bring him back. I do want to talk to him though. And he's like, and so at this point, my son's, he's kind of like confused and he's like, like looking like kind of pulling back. And so I'm like, I'm going to bring you back, let's just talk and then I'll bring you back. And he's telling them, no, she's not. No, she's not. This is kidnapping. This is kidnapping. He's recording me. He has his camera pulled out. Now strangers are starting to record. So I was able to go across the street and talk to him and talk to my son. But his dad came across the street, started snatching on his arm until we fall on the ground. So at that point, after we fall on the ground, he runs back across the street, back to the hotel. He had already made a light threat, so I don't take threats lightly at all. So at this point, just by seeing how he was pretty, I don't know how else to describe, but he was pretty angry. And at this point, when you become physical, and we're now on the ground, I'm like, okay, let's just go. And then I'll call the police. I'll make a report and then we'll figure out the rest later. But at this point, I'm just like, let's get us to safety. So I leave. They've reported a kidnapping and the police pulls us over. So after the police pulls us over, he asked me a few questions, things like, were you all married? Do you all have a court order? And I'm like, no, we were never married. No, there's no court order. He's like, okay, you're good to go. And I'm like, okay. So at this point, I don't have an attorney. I haven't retained an attorney at this point. So at this point, I'm like, okay, I don't know what to do from here. So let's go ahead and retain the attorney. And then that situation ended up giving them, I guess, the ammo to say that I'm the high conflict parent.
Yeah, I see why.
So now,
Yeah, go
so
ahead.
now they instead of that initial medical neglect, they didn't have anything. They didn't have anything to warrant him switching custody. So they used that situation and painted me as the high conflict parent. Although I did explain to them my reasoning for going because of my concern, my lack of communication with him. Since I had been served, I hadn't really even spoken with my son. So now I'm seeing him in the state. I'm like, well, let me go check on him because this is weird. This is odd. And like I said, at the point to where you become physical, I don't know what I'm supposed to do at this point. So I just know to get us to safety and then file the police report and all that. But, I was able to talk to the police at that point when we got pulled over. But yeah, and we both took accountability for the situation, but they only faulted me for it. And he had even said that he didn't have access to his phone to turn off his location. So, he covered up the fact that he had turned off his location. He actually said that I snatched my son out of the vehicle as soon as they pulled up to that hotel, which was a complete lie. So he covered up and lied about his involvement, the way he went about things to make it seem like he's always been, like he was never trying to hide his location. I acted out of emotion and I came and I snatched him out of the vehicle, which was complete.
Okay. Now let me ask you if we can back up just a little bit. when prior to the incident, did he have custody then, or that came after?
No.
So when he was in town with your son, he didn't have custody at the time.
No, it was about a week or two after he had me served.
Okay, so I'm guessing your son was with him for the summer, and then he was in town with the son, and then you basically followed them where they were. Okay, so I see why they were able to flip it. But okay, so let me ask you, why didn't you had a conversation with him prior to? I don't know, because it sounded like you pulled your son away to maybe go talk to him, and it seemed like you were trying to take him away, and then he called the police and he filed for kidnapping. So was he able to see you when you were talking to your son on the side, or you took the son somewhere he was not able to see your son at all?
No, he was able to
No,
see
he was
us.
able to see us.
And he still
Is that
called
what
the
you're
police
asking?
for child kidnapping. Yeah, I'm trying to see
Oh
how
yeah.
the kidnapping accusation was
Yeah.
able to stand in court, because if he has visual, meaning he's able to see you and your son, and he still called the police for for parental kidnapping, that is not kidnapping. You clearly can see them. You know what I mean? But you say earlier that you took your son. I'm trying to see, you took him in the car or you took him somewhere where he had no contact with you guys, which, triggered him calling for parental kidnapping.
Hmm. Well, in court, he agreed, and everybody agreed that it wasn't, in fact, kidnapping. So he took accountability and said he misspoke. He only knows about the laws in his state, and he feels that that's what he was supposed to say in that situation. We were all in
Okay.
the same area. We were right there with each other. He saw me speaking with him, and he didn't want me speaking with him. So then, once he saw me talking to him, and I guess that was what he knew to say, is what he explained it as kidnapping, kidnapping. This is kidnapping.
Okay. Okay. Now, see, I'm asking you this question. I'm not saying, what you're saying it didn't happen or the way that you're explaining it, it didn't. I'm just trying to get, a better understanding of what
Yeah.
happened. And I know that you said earlier that you were looking to appeal the case. Uh, if, and again, I'm not no judge or anything like that. I'm just, just speaking. If I was the judge presiding over this case, my question will be, why didn't you have a conversation with the father prior to you? Because the way that the law is going to look at it is like you snatched a child away. You get what I mean? Because if let's say you appeal this case, what's going to happen is going to go to the higher court. You won't be able to introduce new evidence. So they will use whatever argument and whatever evidence that was presented to the lower court. So if it's recorded in the lower court that you snatched a child or you moved the child to the side, whereby the father had no type of, either for one, no sight, meaning he couldn't see you guys, or he couldn't really do anything to protect the child in case the mother was trying to harm the child. You get what I mean? I'm not saying this is what happened. I'm just, just speaking. So I guess the better question is, why didn't you talk to him just to see if you guys can come up to a mutual understanding whereby you can take the child to the side, talk to the child without him, from the way that you're making it sound like he's overreacting. So without him overreacting, why didn't you have that conversation? Doing this in front of the kid, I don't think, what I mean? No judge will be okay with that. You guys are basically fighting in front
Right.
of the child, where now you have bystanders now, like you say, recording the incident. Again, we don't know how many people call the police. Sometimes it may not be him. It may be somebody else that was just watching, and then they called the police because they saw that. I'm sure your son, I keep saying your son, but I like to use the term yacht son because it's both of y'all, right? So I'm sure yacht son was crying. You know what I mean? I'm sure he was terrified seeing mom and dad going back and forth. You know what I mean? Like, you seem very nice, but I don't know, when you get angry, I don't know I don't know what type of, like what that looks like. So, why didn't you
Yeah.
have
And to be
courage
honest
or
with you,
conversation with them?
And that's what I told, the judge did ask both of us, what could you have done wrong? And I said, I should have maybe reached out to him to see if he would allow me just to have that conversation. And honestly, just by the chain of events and what he told me on that conversation after I got served, I automatically assumed that he wouldn't allow me to speak with him. So I'm like, okay, well, let me go try to speak with him on my own. And, even after I got our son back in my care, I asked him, like, why didn't you tell me you were here? He was like, well, I asked my dad if I would get to see my mom while we were in town, and he just said maybe. So, I mean, even then, it was clear to me that he had no intentions on letting me know he was in town. But I definitely should have still, if I would know now how this would play out, I definitely should have just reached out to him. Even if he told me no, then it was best that I still made that attempt, because they definitely use that to say, to, I guess, say, I don't know, because
And I was saying one thing I usually tell people: whenever a court is involved, your every action is being monitored, is being recorded, and best believe that it will be reported. You know what I mean? The way that you guys talk to each other, the way that you guys interact in person, over the phone, or whatever else it may be, it always, almost always, will make its way to court. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So, and again, that one incident, it's still hard to believe that, because you guys had there was no court order between you two. So all right, so let's pass forward that. So the police came. So I'm guessing you left with your friend, and your son, or your son, left with him.
Yeah, he had, okay, so let me just clarify the situation. So as soon as he saw me speaking with my son, he already started yelling kidnapping. Now, initially he described the interaction as like painting me to be like angry, aggressive, and all that. He presented this recording in court. I wasn't angry, I wasn't aggressive, I wasn't even yelling or screaming. He was the only one that appeared to be angry and yelling. I was calm. I'm just like explaining to myself, I'm like, no, I'm gonna bring you back. Like, let's just talk right here. And there was no aggression from me at all. He was the one that was being aggressive, which was confusing, because if I'm just speaking with him, what makes you feel like I'm kidnapping him? What made you just automatically start yelling kidnapping? And then you yank his arm so hard to where we both fall on the ground. I don't know where this is going to escalate. I'm like, let's get out of here.
Okay. So I'm trying to see what would trigger him to call kidnapping when there's no court order. So he filed initially. So technically, you guys didn't have a court date, no court order, during that time. You came, you took the child, and in the mix of all of that, he called the police. Kidnapping. On what ground? Because there is no court order between you two. So that is not parental kidnapping. So how you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. And I get it. I'm just as confused as you. But what he explained in court when they asked him that question, he said that he only knows about the laws in his state. And that's what you're supposed to say.
But I mean, even that, though, I don't know what state would allow you to call parental kidnapping if there's no court order between you two. You know what I mean? Again, I'm just saying, I don't know of it. You get what I'm trying to say? Okay, so moving forward.
Go ahead.
Coming in. This is where the confusion is coming in, because I'm equally confused.
Okay, so moving forward, the police pulled you over. What happened then?
Yeah, so the police pulled us over. He asked, like, hey, what's going on? He said that, and I immediately started talking. He was like, well, slow down, because he had a few questions he wanted to ask. Things like, does he have custody? Do you all share custody? Or is there a court order? And have you ever been married? Because in the state that we're in, if you've never been married, then the mother automatically has custody. So I'm assuming that's why he was asking those type of things. So after I answered all those questions, he was like, ma'am, you're not doing anything wrong. I can't stop you. Like, take your kid home. And so I'm like, are you sure I can take him? Because I don't want any issues. He was like, yeah, because, you all don't have a court order at this point. And I'm like, okay. And that was it. I made my own police report as well. He gave me the ticket number for that, and he just told me, take him home and then follow up with my attorney. Of course, he can't give me legal advice, but at that point, he said that a kidnapping had been reported. So that's what he was responding to, a kidnapping. But after he got more information, he was like, well, this is your kid. I can't stop you from taking him home.
Yeah, because parental kidnapping usually happens if there is a court order. Meaning, so if he was in town and he had custody of your son, and then you came after them, took the child, you ran off, that's legal parental kidnapping. You get what I mean? But if there was never, now granted he filed. Now I don't know if were there a temporary order between you two when you filed or no.
Not yet. The temporary order
Okay.
wasn't granted until the fall. This happened during the summer.
I see. Okay. Yeah, that's what I don't understand the legal ground that he had to call for parental kidnapping. All right, so the police let you go. You spoke to your attorney. What was that conversation like when you were talking to your attorney about it?
He basically just he gave me advice on how to co-parent from here. Just make sure you're letting him speak with him. Just make sure that you keep an open line of communication. Just continue to be a mother, continue to parent like you've been parenting. Because, like I said, after we had our initial consult and he asked me all these questions like, is he in therapy? Does he do this and that? Is he always at school? Rarely have a tardy, never really absent unless he's sick. So he just told me to keep parenting and to make sure that I continue contact with his dad. And that's what I did. So from that point on, I'm co-parenting as normal. However, I didn't send him back for the summer. So other than that, I allowed them to keep talking. They kept they stayed in contact. I didn't stop communication.
Okay. How many days was it before the court date? So you say you didn't send your son back to go see his father after that incident. And how long after that you had to go to court for the custody?
It wasn't until October. This happened. So it was about 3 or 4 months in between that and the temporary
Okay, so
hearing.
okay, so the father haven't seen your son for 3 to 4 months.
Right.
Okay, and then so you guys go to court. So what was that? How many days did you guys had in court? Was it just everything was settled in that one setting?
No, the temporary order gave us temporary joint custody. And
Okay.
since his summer was cut short, I agreed for him to come for Thanksgiving holiday and for Thanksgiving break and Christmas break. That was just the temporary order until in the temporary order granted us temporary joint custody. He visited him for the entire Thanksgiving break, the entire Christmas break, and then he was supposed to start paying the child support according to the child support charts.
Okay. So I'm guessing prior to all of this, he was not on child support.
No, he wasn't on court order child support, but we agreed on an amount back in like 2016, and he had been allotting that amount once a month since 2016. Now, during the temporary court order, we did realize he was paying 60% less than what he was legally obligated to if he was on child support.
Okay, so at the court hearing, so the judge gave you, I'm guessing 50-50. So we're talking about legal. So who was the custodian parent?
Me.
Okay, so you guys have 50-50 legal, and did he had every other weekend, or what was the visitation like?
It was the Christmas break and Thanksgiving break because he lives in a different state. There was no way to do, every other weekend. So
Right.
the temporary order just read that he gets them for the entire Thanksgiving and entire Christmas.
Okay, and so after the temporary order was granted, did you had any issue letting your son go to the father in these holiday breaks?
No, not at all. Actually, we actually agreed upon that before we even spoke to the judge. So when we went to the temporary hearing, we spoke in the hallway. Our attorneys went back and forth, and I had already agreed, like, okay, since his summer was cut short, he can get Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I did that with no problem.
So what changed to have the judge flipped to give him now full custody?
The judge changed. Yeah, the judge that was initially signed to the case did not handle the rest of the case.
Okay.
That's the only thing that changed.
Okay, and then you were
Other than that-
parenting fine and no problem with the child. The child was still going to school. He wasn't missing school. He was, healthy. No problem there.
No problem at all. When you say we were co-parenting fine, I would say yes. However, it did get people play those court games and they try to trip you up on things, and you just gotta maintain your composure and continue to co-parent with integrity. And it's a dirty game when people just want to win. So even though I say, I was co-parenting to the best of my ability, there were a lot of moments where it was just like, he basically tried to make it difficult to co-parent.
Yeah, this is why I tell people honestly though, if you can find a way to handle your family problems without the court system, it's always best, because when the court comes in, it becomes very nasty. You know what I mean? Like you turn parents against each other,
Yeah.
whereby you have to make each other looks like the devil, basically. You know what I mean? For you to be able to win custody. You know, and this is why I always
Yeah.
tell people family court is not for family. And this is why I have this show, so we can have conversations like this. And I know that it's very hard, and I try not to voice my opinion too much on it, because I'm still going through it to some degree. But if you have the ability to talk to the other parent without the court system, and you guys do what is best for your child, that is always the go to route. If you want to take a minute, we can. You know what I mean? Because I know this is still, it's still an open wound for you.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm fine. Like I said, I just want to express, like, once, once you go to court again, there's no, he wasn't trying to co-parent, really. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't, I wasn't trying to trip him up. I wasn't trying to catch him. Like, I wasn't trying to trigger him to get a reaction so that I can document it. I was just co-parenting normally. But every opportunity, that he could send a long message to try to, I don't know, get me to respond in a certain way, or just to kind of control the narrative. Like, things even as simple as, hi, I noticed, he just got his hair styled, or, are you going to get him, or, he's basically due for a haircut. Instead of just asking, like, when is his next haircut appointment? And then I get him the haircut, and then he comes into town for like the Christmas party at his school. And then he sends me a message and say, I noticed that he has these, I think he referred to them as lacerations on his head. I'm like, I don't know what you're speaking about. But then once I get to the school, I realized that's just where he's been nicked by the barber. But you put this in writing as if there's some type of abuse going on, when this literally just from the haircut that you basically demanded that I give him. And it's like, it just was just so many mind games after that, after the
Yeah.
court order. So it's just trying to, because during this battle, I'm still having a parent. I'm still being the parent. I'm the custodial parent. So I have to make sure my child's well-being is good. I'm still getting them to and from school. We're doing homework. And now there's all this pressure because you are looking for a moment to document, and you're creating those moments. You're creating moments that you can use against me when I'm just being a parent. Like, I've been for 11 years, so this entire time I just been a parent.
Take your time.
Sorry.
No,
So
you're
yeah.
fine. Trust me. I know.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're going through. You know what I mean? And then from what we do, for the fact that I am a father, I usually go about this from a father's perspective. I've just now opened the platform to mothers, so we can find a way to become better parents. You know what I mean? That is the goal behind this platform, honestly. And I try to get a lot of men to understand, like, this back and forth, this fighting, it's not good. It's not good for you. It's not good for the mom, and certainly not good for the child. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
So trust me, I understand your tears. Your tears. I understand the pain behind it. I do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I when I was going through it, I lost my children for a total of 15 months combined. So when I tell you I have a crazy story when it comes to family court, I have a crazy story. So I completely understand where you're coming from. Let me ask you, what do you think was making him wanting to take custody from you completely?
Um, and I want to be clear, I didn't lose full custody. We still have joint custody, but he was
Okay.
granted physical custody. So by him being granted physical custody, it still gives him that power, that control that he wants, which means, he has him during the school year, and now he doesn't have to pay child support. They actually put me on child support. Um, if you want my personal opinion on why, I honestly don't know why he's doing that. I'm assuming out of ego because I told him no, and um, throughout the throughout the relationship, I realized like when you tell a person no, you really stand on what you mean. They don't stop until they get what they want. So, I mean, at some point, he was gonna do it. He just, of course, had to set the stage up until it was time, until he was in the perfect position to do so. Like I said, he positioned himself to win this case. He wasn't involved, initially in the beginning. He increased his participation once he was married. He actually asked me to take over certain responsibilities. So once we got to court, he painted himself to be over these specific things and make it seem like I've just been sitting back doing nothing while he's been handling everything. Things is even smallest. Instead of you taking him to the doctor or his normal checkups and visits and doing his dental cleanings, like since he comes with me for the summer and he's here for the holiday break, like let me do it. I'm like, okay. At this point I'm thinking he's really stepping up. He's trying to help me more. But once I saw, you presented that in court as if, yeah, he gets his, I handle the doctor's visits and dental visits. At this point, I know that I've been set up, to look like the secondary parent, even though I'm the custodial parent, the one that he's in the house with. I've been made to look like my role is just so small because you started to help me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I understand.
So
So when you say you were telling him no, were you
telling
telling
him
him
no
no
because
because
you
you
didn't
didn't
want
want
the
the
relationship
relationship
with
with
him
him
anymore,
anymore,
or
or
you
you
were
were
telling
telling
him
him
no
no
because
because
you
you
didn't
didn't
want
want your
your
son
to
to
go
go
with
with
the
the
father?
father?
well, I was telling him no because honestly, from my observation, his best interest is to remain in the house here where he's comfortable. And it's just certain things that I noticed with his behavior. With his diagnosis, I feel like I've made a lot of progress with the services that he's been in and just how I work with him in the house one-on-one and just kind of help him become a little bit more self-sufficient. I realize when he comes back for the summer or even his interaction with his dad and his stepmom, it's a lot of regressive behavior. Once he comes back home, he talks like he's a 5-year-old kid. And I have to kind of keep bringing him back up to speed and like correcting him his behaviors because they speak to him like he's incompetent or he's like a really small child, and he takes on those personalities that they create or narrate while he's with them. And so I feel like when we're here, we're working on it, I can see the progress. But once he comes back from the summer, it's like very regressive. And I have to kind of get him back on schedule and back up to speed. And then, like I said, if you had a conversation with him where if you just saw him, and a lot of people, of course, until I spoke about my story, they didn't even know that he had a diagnosis because you wouldn't know.
Mm.
Okay. So I guess that is the question the court is going to ask. What makes you the better parent? And I know sometimes it's a very hard question to answer, especially in situations like this. So if I was to ask you that question, what would you say? What makes you a better parent? Why do you think it's not good for your son to be with his father?
I feel like he and I have a very natural and emotional bond. It's not anything that I have to force or I have to, be calculated about or strategic about. Like we have a natural bond. He's comfortable with me. He speaks. He's very articulate when he's with me. He communicates his feelings and his emotions. He doesn't do that when he's with his dad. He's not comfortable communicating.
it's just very kind of calculated and a robotic kind of relationship, as if just going through the motions, which, it's not for me to judge. If you don't do things with emotion, just kind of go through the motions, it's not for me to judge. But I just see the difference in how he acts when he's with, both parents. And like I said, even with the diagnosis, it's just a lot of regressive behavior when he comes from there. And I feel like, because I know him, like I truly know him, I know when he's masking it, I know when he's using it to his advantage. I know that. But if you don't really know him, his personality on a day-to-day basis, you could think that he's having a meltdown when he's really just he's if he will use it to his advantage, and if you don't really know him, you won't pick up on those behaviors, and you'll think that that's how he acts. And I don't know if it's because they really think that he acts the way that he is when he's with them. But like I said, they kind of speak to him like he's incompetent. And I know that I've observed him on the phone with them. I've observed him in person with him, and that's not his personality, but that's the personality he picks, that he takes up on, because he honestly, it's like he's giving them what they want. It's like, you talk to me like I'm a baby, I'm gonna act like a baby. He's using it to his advantage, and I don't know. Like I said, being his mom and raising him his entire life, I truly feel like, this is his comfort. This is his comfort. This is where he progresses. This is where he has grown so much. And if I see behaviors that don't mimic, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like there's any progression much when he goes there. We had parent meetings when we went to the ABA therapist, where we both were present. And something that kind of concerned me was, he would always say, "Oh, he doesn't do that at my house. He doesn't do that at my house." But I know that he does. Like, it's been communicated to me that he does do that. I've had his wife reach out to me before to get help with certain things, like how do I handle this, and when he does that. So to me, I just feel like everything that he put on the record, he wanted to seem perfect when he's with him. He wants to cover up the behaviors that he experiences when he's with him, because he doesn't want, he wants to, he basically made it seem like, oh, she's only having those problems. I don't have those problems. But I have proof, and I know that those same issues were present when he's with him as well. But he doesn't want to acknowledge them, or I don't know if it's for the purpose of this court case or just his own, for himself. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like that was a bit long-winded, but I hope you understand.
I understand. And see, my questioning again is not to doubt your story, you know what I mean? Or to make you look bad. I promise you it's none of that. I ask these questions in a way that when I'm sitting in court, this is the question that I'm asking. Or I'm not asking. This is the question I'm hearing the judges or the attorney. In your case, the opposing attorney is asking, to trying to paint you like this person in front of the judge. You get what I mean? So you have to be comfortable answering this question, especially if you are looking to appeal this case. So the I guess the follow-up question to that will be, how come you are able to see these things but the court is not able to see it? Or better yet, how come your attorney was not able to paint this picture to the judge?
That's a good question, honestly. And I've told this story to a few people, to plenty of attorneys as well, and they just described it to me as he dropped the ball. He thought that this was an easy case, and I tried to give him the heads up, like, he doesn't sleep. Like, I'm updating him in real time. Like, he won't even let me just go on and parent. Like, he's not resting until he gets what he wants. Like, you have to be on this. And he's telling me, hey, if I get on the phone with you, then this, I'm charging you. So I'm following up with the paralegals. Me and the paralegals are like best friends at this point, because I'm like, this is what he's doing. I need y'all to know this. Like, I need y'all to know what he's trying to do. And honestly, it just seems like the case wasn't worked on until like the day before the hearings. Like, you crunch the information, you go back through the messages and go back through the emails, and then you refresh your mind. But as far as the strategy on it, I don't know what it was, because he didn't go in there. I would ask him like, what should I be doing during this time? Because he's trying to work overtime to make sure he makes me look bad. Like, even though he has nothing, he's trying to create something in real time. And he's like, oh, you just keep me in a great mom. But in court, it just seems like he played. I don't know if he played nice. I don't know if he just thought it was that easy. I'm not sure. But for sure, my son's dad, at this point, I realized that it's not about telling the truth. It's not about justice. It's the best performer. It's the best performer. And if you have calculated evidence to support whatever you're, doing, then, because even if the judge felt like there was something missing, or that, he wasn't, like, if he had even a small piece of evidence to back him, to show like, oh, one disagreement where we had, or something like that, like, oh, see, she's angry, and it's like, or if I told a joke, he would make it seem like it was something serious, and he would react to it in court as if, oh yeah, like that was so horrible. And it was obvious that it was a joke, but in this moment, he knows that he needs to take it seriously.
Yeah.
So, he needs to present it as if he was so traumatized by what it was. And it was just like, we were both joking in that moment. And, it's just, again, I would say, if you, on his end, yeah, he did a good job. He did a good job. And I honestly just thought, and everybody gave me the confidence that the judge would see through it, would see through the performance, would see through the lies and the inconsistencies in the story, like blatant lies, lying about screenshots that even have your selfie on here. That's not me. Yeah, these things get altered all the time. And even presented another text thread. Well, what about this? Is this you? Yeah, I don't think that's me either. This is your evidence. You submitted this, and you're lying about this as well. So you're lying about both of these things. This one is from me that I submitted. It has your selfie on it. You're denying that it's you. And then here's another text thread that you're also denying, and it's your evidence from your attorney. And it's like obvious that he's not being honest, and that he's, manipulating certain situations, and he's fabricating stories or exaggerating stories, and nobody held him accountable for it. Nobody called him out on the lies. And even when they called him out, he would take slight accountability mixed with another lie to make it seem like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But if you're years ahead of the plot, I'm late. I've just been parenting, and he's been plotting. He's been plotting this. He's been moving pieces around, what they say, playing chess, not checkers. And I'm just being a mom, not even realizing what's really moving on, what's going on around me. Like, not really realizing that I've, relinquished a certain level of control. Because I'm thinking like, I'm just agreeing with a lot of the stuff. Okay, you want to come get him on this day? You want to do this? Cool. I'm not even putting up a fight. He's had no problems with visitation. I haven't been withholding him or anything. So I'm thinking that, a lot of people were like, well, you should have saw, or you should have never let him do that. But then y'all would have called me bitter. Then y'all would have said I wouldn't let him see his son. So I thought I was doing the right thing by co-parenting, no agreement. I'm thinking that that's the ideal situation.
I'm curious, before we get into the judge being biased, I'm a little shocked about the performance of your attorney. It seems like you were doing a lot more than what your attorney was doing. So, have you ever thought about maybe suing him for malpractice? Because it sounded like he was very negligent in a lot of things. I don't know how much he charged you, but, and I tell this to people again, when it comes to family court, you get what you pay for. The cheaper they are, sometimes you want to be careful with that. And I know some attorneys are very expensive, but based on their track record, it makes sense for them to ask for when it comes to retainer fees. You know what I mean?
I'm sorry, I was gonna say I don't know what normal attorneys go for, but I can say that it wasn't cheap at all. He wasn't cheap. Like, I didn't go to him because he was cheap. I actually had some cheaper options. I'm like, well, no, let me get someone that I feel like, even though he charges a lot, like, let me still get someone that I feel like would be good enough for this case. Um, I don't know how much I can speak about that, here, if that's something I want to look into, but I have been told and advised that that's something I need to do. I just didn't know if, since he's assigned to that case, I don't know, like, if it's going to impact whatever I try to do moving forward.
Yeah, you want to be very mindful on how you move. But at the same time, if your attorney is negligent, meaning he's not taking what you are telling him under consideration, I feel like that is not someone for you, because at the same time, as an attorney, they have to be able to listen to you, because you know your child's father better than the attorney does. You know your child better than the attorney does. Now he understands, the procedure, the court system, how we move and all this other stuff. But when it comes to the backstory, he does not know that. So if he can listen to you, it makes it very tough. Makes it very tough for you guys to move forward. Have you thought about suing him for malpractice?
I've thought about it after I realized that there were some areas of opportunity that I do feel like were missed. I haven't taken action on anything just because I don't know how it's going to impact my case moving forward.
Yeah. Now I get you. I get you. All right. So you, when your attorney got the ruling, the judge gave your child's father custody, so physical custody. So is it written in the court order that you guys have 50-50 legal and he has full physical custody, or what's the language on that?
So we have 50-50 joint legal custody, but due to distance, joint legal custody is not possible. So it was granted to his dad.
Okay. So
with me getting visitation during the summers and basically every other holiday.
Okay. So after that ruling, what was the conversation like with your attorney?
Honestly, there wasn't a conversation. He was actually out of town for a conference, and we had been waiting. We had already been in contact with each other back and forth because we had did like the findings of facts. And so when the final verdict came, he sent it in an email. He attached it and he said, hey, can't read this, but I did want to send it up on receipt. And he sent it. Initially, I didn't know what it was because I clicked on it. I scammed through it, and it just seemed so one-sided. I thought it was his attorney's findings of facts from the trial because everything was like, it mimicked so closely what his attorney's findings of facts were. I thought that's what it was. So I ignored it for the most part until I received contact and communication from his dad, basically giving the plans to come pick him up and sending over the final child support that he was paid. So me and my attorney didn't have an initial conversation until I realized, and I went back and I read it after getting that last payment, and then he sent me flight details and I reread it, and then that's when I discovered that was the final verdict. And so I reached out to him. I'm like, wait, what does this mean? Like, does this mean I lost? And he basically was like, unfortunately, yes. Like, and just told me, like, you can appeal it. Unfortunately, I don't do appeals, and you'll just need to find somebody to handle the case from here. And this was all in an email. I had to figure out on my own that it was actually the final verdict because his wording was just like, hey, just got this. Haven't had time to look over it, but wanted to send it when I got it. And I guess left it up to me to figure it out. And it wasn't until I read it and reread it and had somebody else to read it to me, like, that's exactly what it was. And honestly, it just, nothing could have prepared me for it. I wasn't even made aware that this was even a possibility. Like, this wasn't even the worst case scenario from what I understood. Like, this wasn't possible.
Wow. So what was your relationship like with your attorney going through all of this? Were you guys arguing? Like, what was it like? Because it sounds like, I don't know, I can't really explain it, because I don't want to seem like I'm attacking him. I'm just trying to understand. Usually, at least the attorneys that I know, when there is a court ruling like that, they would call you and explain to you what decision the judge have made and You know what I mean? Like how you can go about following that court order. And it seemed like you didn't even get that chance with them.
Well, I followed up with his office because, again, he did justify it by saying that, I hate when they send out, final verdicts during conferences, because he said that he was at a conference, like he wasn't able to have that conversation, is what he said. So I reached out to his office, I think after, because I believe it came through on a Wednesday. So by Friday, I was speaking with his office and they said that he wasn't in, but I believe he called me on that Monday. We had a bit of a conversation, but he basically was like, yeah, that judge is, he griped about the judge and just said like he can't believe that he made that verdict, and he believed that it was unfair, and he didn't have a lot of advice to give me other than appealing it, but he acted like he was just as shocked as me. But it wasn't really I don't know, I didn't get the impression that he had any type of emotional connection to the case at all. It was just kind of like, can't win them all. He was like, because we could think about, things that after you get a final verdict, you can think about all type of things that could have went differently, but that won't really change anything. It did kind of make me feel like he was a little nonchalant about it. Like, if you feel like this was an unfair ruling, I feel like you should be giving me some other steps. And other than that, it's just been sending invoices for the remaining balance.
So at any point during this process or this progress, I guess you can say, with your attorney, at any point did he set you down or call you, email you about the possibility of you losing custody based on the evidence that your child's father had, based on the evidence that you were, that you and him had, or the things that you were telling him about the whole situation? At any point did he set you down again, called you, email you, and say, you know what, I think this case may not go your way, let's look for a different route maybe?
No, that was never that. Like I said, this completely blindsided me. That never seemed to be even an option. It was never presented to me as an option or a possibility. Even when we went to mediation, the mediator was like, and this is with all the evidence, even the situation that they used over the summer, with my history of parenting, even with his participation, nobody ever prepared me for this being a possibility. We went to mediation and the mediator was like, because he wouldn't budge on it was like he wouldn't come up with a fair arrangement. He wanted the entire summer and every holiday, and now he wanted spring break as well. And the mediator was like, I don't know what this guy is wanting, but no judge is going to agree to this. He was like, let me know how this turns out. He told me, you could walk into the courtrooms with an I hate judges shirt on and you would still win this case. He said, guaranteed. So.
Right, but you see where my questions are coming from, right? Because like I told you at the beginning of this show, it's not every day that you see fathers win custody, And then again, from a father speaking, again, this is not in your case, just the general sense of it. It's usually a good thing to see fathers win. You get what I mean? So whenever you come to a case like yours, for example, whereby you see mothers losing custody, it's usually there is always something bad that happened, or the mother's either negligent, the mother's either unwilling or unable to take care of the child like she's supposed to. That's usually when we fathers are able to get in and get custody. But if mom is doing everything that she can, I actually I did a podcast with an attorney that explained that she had a client who was on crack. The father was literally doing everything that it was supposed to, and he still lost custody to that crackhead. You get what I mean? So if you're doing everything right, and that comes in, and then again with your story that you have not seen the child or haven't got the child with full custody for about 11 years or so, and just out of the blue get custody, that's shocking. So for the mediator to tell you that you can go in there with a shirt that says I hate the judge and still win custody, that is the truth, honestly. And we have seen it happen. You get what I mean? So I think that's the question that you're gonna get with your story. What is it that you're not telling us? You know what I mean? Or what is it that what is the truth behind this case? For men to win custody is very, very, very difficult. So
Yeah. Sorry, I was just gonna say, and I agree, and that's I'm just as shocked, and I'm trying to be as transparent as possible. I'm trying to give as much details. The only details that I haven't mentioned because I feel like it's irrelevant is just the the cheating attempts and all that, which they didn't allow me to speak to. But I feel like it spoke to his character. It spoke to this perfect image and this perfect marriage that he was trying to portray. There were more details that weren't considered, wasn't put into the evidence. There were things that I
Wait, hold on.
presented as
Let's back up. Okay, hold on one second. Who was cheating before you go on with it? You were cheating or he was cheating?
well, there were times where he's come to me, like he's come at me. He's basically admitted that they're having marital issues, and he's kind of after I became single, he started getting a little flirtatious, and apparently, I found out through a third party, which was one of his relatives, that I was a big issue in their household. Now, it was told that she knew that it wasn't me because you can tell in the responses that I'm blowing it off. I'm not paying it any attention, but he was overly communicative with me at a lot of points. So I don't know if it was after he realized that I'm not budging, where he feels like there's no need to keep being nice to her. I don't know what it is. Again, I'm just as lost as everybody else because we had developed a pretty decent co-parenting relationship. I'm not going for any funny stuff on the side or anything like that. So I don't want to blame it on that, as far as his reason for seeking custody, because I honestly, it just, to me, seems like I told him no. And now it's like, okay, well, I'm going to show you that I have, and that's what he told me. I have just as much right as you do. And he kind of just sent like a silent warning. And again, I didn't think anything of it because we continued to co-parent fine. He flew in, we all went to one of my son's field trip out of town, like a couple hours away. He acted normal until, like I said, I sent him for the summer. He filed for custody. So when I say I'm blindsided, because I've done everything throughout the years to accommodate him, to show that I'm a willing participant in the co-parenting dynamic. And it's just not until I say no and I put my foot down on something that I felt strongly against. And he's like, yeah, that doesn't work for me.
yeah. Now, usually, just for clarification purposes, when it comes to cheating, unless the child is somewhat hurt by it, it's very hard for you to bring that in court because the two it's not related. You know what I mean? So I guess that's probably why the court didn't really want to hear you speak on that. And when you bring a conversation like that or you bring that argument, it seems like you are trying to take the focus away from the child and more so trying to prove that the other parent
Right.
is bad. And I think that's the mistake that many of us make whenever we have these custody disputes, where you are so focused on trying to make the other parent look bad that you are forgetting to show the judge that you are the better parent for, to take on this child full time. Again, so again, I don't know
Right.
if that. I mean, to me personally, I think that hurted your case more than it helped. Again, I don't know if your attorney was the one making that
We
argument or
didn't
not.
mention it.
Yeah, I didn't
Yeah,
mention.
we
Okay,
didn't
okay,
mention
okay.
it. Yeah, I just said that to say that we had evidence and proof of a lot of things that could have made his character be questioned. And my attorney didn't even take that approach to like paint him out to be any type of way because he didn't feel like he needed to. But they definitely took that approach because they, said things that weren't related to the case to try to paint me in a certain way. And I don't know if that did because it wasn't related to this case, because they asked me, had I ever been in a physical or verbal altercation? And I'm like, yeah, like, oh, when? I'm like, in high school, like, so it's like, oh, see, she has a history of violence, and those are the type of things that, of course, they try to do in these cases. But I'm not going to lie about it because I don't know, like, what you found or what. There's no point in me telling a lie about something that's not related to who I am as a mother or even a grown woman at this day and age. But like I said, we didn't speak to the infidelity attempts and things like that, but I think it would have maybe put
into perspective what was actually going on, because the judge act like he was interested in like what's really the issue here. And I'm like, it's hard to explain and to describe and to really get the full. If I'm not, you don't go in there and get to do a story time. You go in there and you answer the questions, and some of these questions they're still not giving the full story. And so, like, even had text messages which were read into the evidence where when I was pregnant, you asking me like, you got to get an abortion, and if you don't, like, I'm like basically threatening me. He told me when I was pregnant, while telling me that I need to have an abortion, telling me that if I ever try to seek child support, he would then take me to court, take custody, and put me on child support. And 11 years later, that's exactly what he did with no justified reason. So to me, I feel like this has always been your mission. And I don't know if it was out of spite or what, but once you came around and you co-parented with me, I thought that, you know, you had developed a genuine relationship and bond with him, and not that you wanted to get me back for having him after 11 years. So I don't know. Those that was presented because he said like, this is your kid, don't contact me at any point about this kid. And the fact that I still never kept you from him, I still encouraged a relationship, and I still co-parented with you for 11 years and wasn't bitter about it or anything. And it's like you didn't have that to use. You couldn't say that I was bitter, you couldn't say that I withheld him. So you created a narrative, and still trying to create a narrative and calculate and manipulate evidence to support it.
Yeah.
It's tough though. I won't lie to you, because I'm still, I don't know. I guess the question that I still have, and I'm sure a lot of people watching this will also have, is if you are doing everything right as a mother, you have had your child for 11 years. How do you lose custody? You get what I'm saying? It's like we're still missing that part. It's very hard to believe it. At least the cases that I have seen, the cases that I've sat on, it's usually mom is doing something wrong. But based on your story, apart from you showing up where he was with the child and then you guys started fighting, the police were called, parental kidnapping was, was said to the police stopped you, but they still let you go with the child. You get what I'm trying to say? So it's very hard to believe that you lost custody when you were doing everything right. Am I making sense? And again, I'm not accusing you. I'm just looking at it from the outside looking in.
You know,
And rightfully so, because that's the bigger thing here. Because I feel like if there was something, I would understand, and I wouldn't even be speaking out publicly about it. But because there was so much that's confusing to still me, that's the only reason why I even came and spoke about it, because I'm still confused. I'm still trying to figure it out. And I mean, in the final verdict, I mean, I feel like they wrote it up well. They listed that as a situation, attached it to a law of when, high conflict parent, pattern of high conflict. But this was the only thing that they listed. They had every date from when he flew in and out of town. Anytime he visited, they had dates and receipts and flights. So all of these times there was no conflict, but this makes her the high conflict parent and a pattern. This is a pattern. And another thing that they used, they basically tried to paint me. They said that, though the mother has taken care of him, but she's met his basic needs, and basically said it was like bare minimum parenting is what they addressed it as. And I'm like, it's a slap in the face. It's a slap in the face, considering everything that goes into being a parent, especially a single parent. There's only one parent in the household. I do everything. Like, you can support and send your contribution towards the child support financially, but physically I'm doing everything. So to be addressed as bare minimum was kind of a slap in the face. Also, there was one instance where my car went down, and so my stepdad was picking my son up from school. And on the one occasion and I work from home, so while my car was getting worked on, like, I don't really, I didn't need the transportation at the time, but my stepdad was picking him up from school. Now, for another amount of time, I did have a second vehicle to drive, but this particular time, that I didn't have that vehicle yet, but my stepdad was assigned to go pick him up from school. He couldn't on one day. On one occasion, it's the last minute, he let me know he couldn't make it. So me being a mother, I'm thinking I'm being superwoman. Guess what I do? I Uber and I go get him from school. Cool. $50 there and back. They use that against me and they put it in the court order as if I do that on, like, that's how I get him to and from school. They said mother admitted to Ubering to go get son from school. But they said that like that's how I'm like, that was on one occasion. And I feel like that was because I was coming up with a solution. Like my stepdad couldn't pick him up that day and I went and picked him up in an Uber. And I'm like, what was wrong with that? Like, how does that make me unfit or unstable?
How did they find out about that Uber trip?
Like I said, we had a decent co-parenting relationship. So I told him, I guess at the time, but I didn't ever think that, I'm not thinking that he's, like I said, I'm not thinking that he's really writing down stuff. Like, or I don't know if it was through text message, because I don't even think that at the time he thought anything of it. But for some reason, I don't know. Again, I guess he used that against me.
And this is another thing
but
that
like,
I want to comment on quickly. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, we had a decent relationship. I'm telling him stuff like, okay, like my car is down. So he checked back in like, oh, you get a car yet? And I think even at one time he was like, well, maybe me and my youngest son dad, like, maybe we can get together and like pay for give you a down payment or something. I'm like, no, I'm good. Like, I'm trying to see if I'm going to get a new car, if I'm going to fix my car. And he even told them, like, I asked him for money for the car, which was not true. He offered that. And that was on a phone call. So of course I didn't have proof, but he also didn't have proof that I asked him for money, but they wrote it up as fact. And I'm like, I never asked him for money for a car. He offered me a down payment and I told him no.
Yeah, usually in family court, the bars are very low. So anything that you say can be taken as true until you prove that it's not true. You know, especially if they have established a line of, if they have evidence where they are, you know, what they are saying and what they are showing as evidence, it's aligning. So they can add a little bit of a white lie in there and it will still be taken as fact, you know, again, until you are able to prove that. But I wanted to say this before we move on. This is a good example of never underestimate the power of a good attorney. You know, a good attorney can take any little thing and flip it in a way that when it's presented to the judge, it's now magnified, like it's blown out of proportion, or taken out of context. And if you don't have a good attorney to object to that or fight against that, it becomes very hard for you to stand before that judge, especially if they're trying to paint you like somebody, like you say, somebody that you are not. So I wanted to ask you this. When you were going to this custody battle with your child's father, what was your finances like? If you don't want to talk about that, that's fine. Like, were you stable, meaning you had your own place? The apartment was under your name. The car was under your name, things like that. All those things were in place?
Yes, like I'm self-sufficient. Like I have we live in a townhome. I have my own car. I have a stable job. I've been with my job for 6 years. Actually 7 years. We've been in our residence for 6 years. So it's not like I move around a lot. It's not like I don't have a car, you know, besides that one time when the car went down. And my finances were good up until this point. Like I had a pretty decent savings account, but as you know, like the family court system, child custody, this has drained my resources. I even was operating a small business. I'm an entrepreneur as well. And I had just finished up a pop-up shop when I got served. So this has taken my attention away from my business, which was a second source of income for me. So, you know, before this, we were pretty stable. We were stable. There were no complaints. He has always, and I've always been complimented on how well dressed and well kept we are, and our home clean. Like there's no complaints. Like people know me for being a good mom. So for this to happen and then to happen to me, it's a slap in the face for me and then everybody that knows us as well.
I think I don't know. You're
So I really do believe that all this comes down to your attorney. You know, the way that they were
Yeah.
able to put your case together and bring it before the judge. Because based on, what you were saying and
So
the way that you are describing it, I don't think your attorney did his job. Just my personal opinion. I feel like
yeah,
your child's father had a good attorney who understood the law and how to, how to make certain things appear before a judge. And I'm saying that because, going back to your story on Facebook, you say that you believe that judge was biased, or the judge with your child's father with child's father attorney was somewhat related. You know what I mean? So this is why I'm not really asking too many questions about the judge, because it comes back to your attorney, because I don't feel like your attorney did not represent you to the best of his ability, if that makes sense.
right. Also, I didn't mention in that Facebook post, I didn't mention in my story time, but there was also a second conflict of interest. So, I guess it's up to the judge to recuse himself if he feels he's going to be biased, if he's related to his attorney. But the first conflict of interest, which was the first red flag in this case, was during that time where I was seeking representation before I retained my attorney. I had a full consult with a lady. I spoke with her. I gave her my, the whole rundown, pretty much like I'm doing now. And I
Hold on. Say that again.
told
It cut
her
off.
about our co.
It cut off. Say that again. You say you had what with the judge?
So I said that, wait, I didn't stop at that point. What did you say?
No, you were saying conflict of interest, and it cut off there. We didn't hear that part. You said what was the conflict of interest?
Oh, okay. So the conflict of interest, so, it's up to the judge to recuse himself if he feels like he's going to be biased because he found out he was related to the attorney. Well, the first conflict of interest in the case was early. After I had been there and I was seeking representation, I did the lady. Um,
Yeah, it froze. I'm sure. I think I don't know if it's on your side or on my side. Um, okay, let's go back to the conflict of interest again. That's the part that we're missing. Like whenever you start talking about that, it just cuts off.
I don't know. Maybe I'm not supposed to talk about it, but so the first conflict of interest in this case was early on. After I had been served, I started seeking representation. I'm doing consults with attorneys just to try to see who's the best for the case, you know, who even specializes in this area. So I did a full consult with the lady. I gave her the complete rundown. I tell her about our co-parenting dynamic. I give her the history of my parenting and our relationship. And she's like, yeah, I can help you. And I tell her like what he's saying and the order and what he's going to try to use. And she's like, no, yeah, he's not going to be able to do that. And, she was pretty confident, like, yeah, we can help you. And she was like, is he represented? And I told her, yes. So she asked me who was representing him. I got the paperwork and I said, are you all? And I list the name. And she said, yes. I said, you represent him. So I did a full consult with his current attorney and the attorney that won the case. So she had basically both sides of the story. She had my full story, and then she had whatever he told her as well.
Yeah, she wasn't supposed to do that.
Yeah, no.
You brought that up in court. What did the judge say?
I didn't bring it up in court. I brought it up to my attorney that I did retain, and he said, well, I know the attorney, I know the judge, I'm not worried. Because I know basically like I know the game and I know the players. That's what he said. I know the players. I'm not concerned. I don't want to make it an issue, and then he goes and get a better attorney. So it was never addressed. And me not knowing the law, not knowing that this is a true conflict, I didn't say anything because at this point I have representation. He knows the law. He's going to tell me like if this is an issue or not.
Yeah, that wasn't supposed to happen. Yeah, that wasn't supposed to happen. Okay, so you say you trying to file for an appeal, right?
I'm trying. I only have about 2 more weeks left, honestly. By
Okay.
July 30th, I have to file my notice of appeal.
Okay. So that's something that if I was you, I would add it to the appeal as well. Because it sounded like it was a mistrial. Also, again, I'm just talking. This is no legal advice or anything like that. We're just having a conversation. I would do that if I was you. I think that's something that I would put in the in my appeal and bring it before the higher court. So, how does this now ties to the judge? When you say that the judge was biased against you?
Well, I don't want to say he was for sure. I'm just saying there's a possibility because again, the first conflict of interest is the fact that I had a full consult with his attorney. The second one was the fact that the judge and the attorney told the court on the first day of the hearing that they were related. They did.
Hold on.
Well, we've
The
never met. We don't.
the attorney say that they were related to the judge.
Yes, my son's dad's attorney, the same one I did the consult with, and the judge found out that they were related and they were from the same hometown, the same hometown. So throughout those 2 days of the trial, I kept noticing she would like make little comments like, "Oh, how was the drive from here?" and "Oh, are you going back home this weekend?" and stuff like that. And it raised a red flag with me. So when they announced it to the court that, "Oh yeah, we just realized we're related," I told my attorney like, "Oh no." He's like, "Well, I don't think he'll be biased." He said, "Your son's dad basically has already lied so much. I don't want to give him time to retract any of his statements. So I think we should continue." I don't know, as just, me being not knowledgeable of the law. Like, I don't know that I have the voice to say no, like, let's not continue. I I'm listening to my counsel, and he said continue. So I'm just like, okay. I'm thinking that there's laws and stuff in place to protect me from stuff like that. I'm not knowing that there's going to be a part in this case that's going to be up to the judge's discretion. And his discretion heavily, I don't know. I don't want to say a lot on that situation because I'm still kind of trying to work through my options as far as what I can do about it. So I don't want to speak too much about that in particular, but if it's at the judge's discretion, if I knew that his discretion weighed so heavily on the case and the final verdict, then and I knew that something could have been done, then I would have asked that he recuse himself.
But in family court, the judge is the judge and the jury. So the case comes down to their complete discretion. So they don't have. It's not like they have somebody or a group of people like in criminal cases that they have to turn to. What do you guys think? Or, do you guys find this guilty or not guilty? No. Family court, the judge makes they have complete discretion, which is, again, the thing is, you want to be very careful with those type of accusation because if you are not able to prove it, it's going to become very hard for you in the future because if this judge is still on the bench, you have to be, you're going before this judge again for, I don't know, whatever something happened in the future, but you accused them of being biased on your prior cases. You see what I'm saying? So that's a very hard bar to try to prove whenever you bring it to a higher court. I personally think that your attorney did not do what they were supposed to do. That's just my, either that or, and again, the only logical thing that I can come up to, again, is something that either happened in the relationship or they were able to bring to court that showed you, or that, that showed that you are not this person that you are showing us right now. You get what I mean? So either you were angry, you were combative, you were nasty in the mouth, you were physical, something like that for them to be able to bring before a judge to say, you know what? I think the child's safer with the father as opposed to the mother. Both to say that the judge and the attorney, and again, it could be true, but how are you going to prove that?
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying?
That's gonna be.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Even in instances where he tries to make it seem like I'm the combative one, the evidence that he proved, like he said, like, yeah, there was a time where we let our son fly alone. just to kind of cut down on the expenses. And he had the flight attendant, I forgot what it's called, but he has a flight attendant fly with them and get them to and from their destination. He said, yeah, she was upset about that. And she said, never again. And she cursed me out. We were able to go through all the text messages that we presented and find that communication. And there was nowhere in there where I was angry and even what he said that I said, it was coming from a place of concern. I'm like, like, we're not doing this again. Like, because there was some travel delays. He was stuck in the air and they were having problems. And I was like, oh no, we can't do this again. Like, I'm not comfortable with this. But then once he got caught in that lie and called out on it, he goes, oh, well, what you're not tracking is the conversation that we had. We never had a conversation. We only text about it. But, you lied about me being aggressive or angry. And this text message clearly shows my tone and everything. So I'm like, even the lies that he was telling, they weren't matching up to what the evidence he was presenting. So he can try to paint it, but none of that evidence showed that. So I don't know. Again, I don't know. And again, I'm not blaming the judge. I don't know who to blame. I mean, again, I guess I was just poorly represented.
Yeah, we're gonna come back to your attorney. Let's go back just a little bit. When you got the judge's final decision that your child would be going to his father, what was that night like for you?
It was definitely tough. Like I said, initially, I didn't know what that verdict said or meant. We were actually driving in the car, and I had to pull over just to read that. And I kind of had my moment, and I did some crying there. Um, it was pretty tough just because of the way it was worded, and you can see the way it went out. I mean, the way it worked out, and it was just like, wow. Like, now I got an understanding of, it's not about the truth, it's what you can put in black and white. And I felt totally blindsided. I honestly felt set up. It was tough, especially because you know he had already expressed that he didn't want to go. And so my fight was with him in mind because he didn't want to go. He expressed that to me. So at this point, I feel like I failed him because I lost the case. And now, I know that he has to move. And even that verdict read like, this is to go into effect immediately, when school ends. School was set to end the very next day. So we had no time to even deal with it. He had to go like it was put in place for the very next day. And it took so long for the verdict to come out. And it was just, to me, it was just weird that it went into effect the day after it was sent out. And I'm like, wow, this doesn't even give him time to prepare, or me to, prepare him for the transition. And so that same night, like I said, he sent the flight details, and he was here to get them by Saturday. And the verdict was out on a Wednesday. School was set to end on Thursday, and he picked them up on Saturday.
Wow. Wow. We can take a minute. Do you want to take a minute?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'm fine. Well, like, he sent those flight details, and it took me a minute, but I finally responded, and all I just said was okay, just to confirm that I got the message. And it didn't stop there. He's like, can you confirm that okay means that you've received this information and that you are going to be at the pickup location at this time? And I'm just like, you've won. Like, we don't have to do that. Like, it's just so foot on neck at all times, at all moments. Everything is just like so court driven. And it's just like, let me know that it's not because you want the best for him. You just want to win. And you just want to show me that you have power over me. And so, it was at that moment where I just felt like I wasn't I wasn't even like protected by law.
So anyway, um, he left and he was gone for 2 weeks. The order said that, he had to be returned, to me to spend time for the summer. So, he left initially just for the 2 weeks. And the day after he got there, the first thing he did again was turn off his location. But remind you that when we went to court and the situation happened over the summer, he said, yeah, I don't have access to his information and I didn't turn off his location. But that's the very thing that he did. The very first thing that he did once he got him in his custody again.
It's tough though. It's tough. I think, like I was telling you earlier, and I have to say this because I don't want to be, I don't want anybody to be confused about this conversation. I'm sure you've seen the platform. I'm all team dad. You know what I mean? I stand for fathers because I see what we go through when it comes to family court. A lot of us get the short end of the stick time and time again. But the one thing that I've come to understand that's become very clear to me the more I do this work is that the family court is really not for family. If you and your child's father can come together and work things out of the court, that's always the best solution. Because the way things are going, you're hurt. And again, we don't know his situation and the child is in the middle. I'm sure the child, especially at 11 years old, he's able to see what's going on and understand it as well. But we don't know how it's affecting him. You know what I mean? So the moment that the family court steps in, you have to create this adversary type of situation where now you and your child's father have to go at it back and forth, to see who is the better parent, even though you guys had a good relationship prior to that. You know what I mean? Again, I'm sorry that you're going through something like that, and I really do hope that you and your child's father can come to a better understanding and do what is right for your child. Again, I don't know the full story. I'm just going based on our conversation today. But personally, like I was telling you earlier, I won't take the route accusing the judge of being biased, because that's a very, since you are still have pending cases or looking to appeal, that's a very dangerous route to take. You know what I mean? I will literally challenge the way the attorney represented you. If you feel like the attorney did not, at least based on the way that you're explaining things, I don't think the attorney have done what he was supposed to do. Again, I don't know how much he charged you, but if it was anywhere from $3,500 to $5,000, $6,000, that's a lot of money. I don't feel like he represented you the way that he should have, or she should. Was it a man or a woman, your attorney?
It was a man.
A man? Yeah, I don't feel like he represented you. Or maybe he was just too confident with himself, thinking like, you know what, since he's mom, you're going to win. And that may have been his downfall. But either way, I feel like there was a lot more of conversation that was supposed to happen between you and your attorney about your case, So it's a very unfortunate situation. And I really do pray that you and your child's father will come to understanding and will come to an agreement, later on. How many kids do you have, if you don't mind me asking?
I have two.
2 kids, same father?
No.
Okay. What is your relationship with your second child's father?
We actually have a really good relationship. We're no longer together, but we have a very good co-parenting relationship. He actually testified on my behalf, spoke to my mothering, and basically said, like, it's not by accident that she's my child's mother. Like, she's a great mom. I witnessed her parent her oldest son, which is how, we ended up being in a relationship and then coming to have our own child as well. So we have a good relationship. I mean, during breakups, you go through things, but at this point we co-parent really well, and no court order or anything. And, people are telling me like, hey, take heed, but I think he's been like right next to me through the whole thing. And I don't think he's even interested. And he's like, no, I don't think he would want to take that route either, because he sees what it's doing. And, he has a personal relationship with my oldest son as well, because he helped raise him at some point. So he's taking it very personal, and, it's impacting him as well.
If you guys have a good relationship, why are you guys not together?
I guess I'm still working through that as well, just because people are good dads, that don't make them good boyfriends or husbands and things like that. So it's just certain things that, I don't tolerate in relationships that some people might. And I just I feel like I have a lot of self-respect, and I've gained that, of course, over the years, and certain things I just don't allow in my relationships.
Okay. See, I'm asking that question again, you know, uh, uh, because we're still trying to figure out what happened for you to lose custody. You know what I mean? If I was your child's father and I was bringing an argument about your character, I will bring something like this up to the court. You know what I mean? I don't know if they
Yeah.
did or not. I will. Because if you describe him to be a good father, a good man, and all this other stuff, why are you guys not together? You get what I mean? And again, I don't know.
That's
No,
that's
if he
no fault of
testified again.
mine, just to be clear.
Okay.
That's my decision. That's no fault of mine, because, if he had his way and, conversations we had, then we would still be together. So I don't think he has any complaints about me as a woman or as a mother. I don't think he has any complaints that would, you
Yeah.
know, justify this verdict and this ruling, or, anything like that. Or my
Yeah.
character. I don't think it would put the reason that we're not together, I don't think it would put my character in question at all.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Again, I don't mean to, to put your business out there. I think, whenever I do this show, I try to get as much understanding as I possibly can. So the people that are watching, that are listening, that are
Mm-hmm.
dealing with the court system, you will know how to move around. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
the moment the court gets in your business, everything, all the dirty secrets, the skeleton that you have buried, God knows what years ago, they will come out. And then you have to be ready to face them in court. Unfortunately, that's the name of the game. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
what is your next move now? I know you say appeal. So are you in the process of doing that? Are you putting, your documents together? Do you have an appeal attorney, or what's your progress right now with that?
I don't know. That's kind of what I'm seeking right now. But as you know, the appeals are very, very expensive. And, unfortunately, this has been a very expensive process already. So I've heard anything from $10,000 to $20,000 for the appeal. So I'm just trying to weigh my options and see, if that's my only step and how to go about doing it. And, I'm running out of time, because you have a 30-day window, and I think I'm already 13 days in. So if I don't do the appeal, then I would just, I don't know. Honestly, I don't really know what my next step is. But that's one of the options that I have. I just don't know how to go about doing it at this point.
Yeah. So what is hard for you? I think I asked this at the beginning of the show. Um, what is hard for you to accept the judge's ruling? Father one custody. Let's take away the child support that you have to pay. Will you be okay with that decision, or at least are you getting to the point where you are okay with that decision and just let things be the way they are right now? Or you feel like you have to get an appeal going?
I've tried to just accept it and see, how we can, see how it works out. But um, he makes it clear and evident that he's not going to be co-parenting fairly. This to him has put him in power and control, and he never misses a moment to let me know that. And then, most importantly, what's keeping me wanting to just